Okay, so in the previous tutorials, the whole idea was how to create a cloner system to create a set of stairs and how to animate it in such a way that they appear, right, or they grow into place in some kind of snazzy, fun way, right? And there was a practical example, it was a set of stairs, right, that we could use one way or the other. Well, what if you don't really want to make stairs? What if you want to do something a little more interesting? Or I shouldn't say interesting, more experimental, right? So I'm going to delete the plane with the idea that, you know, we're using a clone system here, but what if we used a, what if we wanted multiples of these? What if we create some kind of form and we want to put that set, let's start this way. If I create one object and I put it in a cloner system, can I take a cloner system and put it into a cloner, right? Because it's one object, it's a complicated object, right? I can put that into a system and that into a system or whatever. So this can go on. So I'm just going to sit here, I'm just doing this on the fly. I did some kind of similar things in class, but I just want to experiment with what this might look like. Oh, I don't know, let's make the X something thinner, right? So I have this little setup here. What if I made, instead of 10 copies, let's do 20, right? And the one thing I like about this is that it runs through, right? It doesn't get to the point where it finishes all of them. That's kind of nice. Let's maybe, what if I select the linear field here? And let's make that a little bit bigger. Yeah, that's pretty good. Maybe I'll make that, the way that animation happens, a little bit faster. So that's at frame 30. Let's make this a little quicker here. That's not bad. Okay, so I have this interesting shape. I have this nice little color set up in here. Oh, maybe too, let's go back to the step effector and let's get some rotation involved. So maybe on the z-axis, let's have it rotate. Ooh, I think we can go all the way to 190 or 180 here. Right, you can see, so it starts to bend over to the side. I want that one to be a little bit more. So within the step, let's look in the graph editor here. Now you have 5, no, let's make it 8. Ooh, that's kind of nice. It's got this spring to it. In fact, let's make that 10. I'm liking it. Right, and we're just going to leave those. I like that it kind of fades out there a little bit. Maybe what we'll do is on the cloners, I still think it'll be a little bit better here. So I have 20. Let's make this more like 15. And let's make the clones on the Z, let's make them 15. So they're a little bit thinner. And maybe let's make the cloner, let's make 40 copies maybe. 30 copies. Okay, that's a nice little shape. And I think those, I'm thinking about how I might duplicate these. And if I go to the step effector, sorry, effector parameters, I said 180. Let's do like 120. Let's not have it lean over too far because I think it will run into the other objects that I want to put in there. But that's kind of nice, right? It has this nice little accordion feel to it. And again, I could always come back and adjust this. It's still affecting too much on the end. I want it to kind of taper a little bit. Okay, I'm going to call that good. I can mess with it forever. In fact, I am going to mess with it just a little bit more. Let's let's make that like 34 copies. Oops, not 24, 34. Okay. Right, and this is where it's helpful to have the step size across there. Sorry, to do it as a per step effect. I can also modify this a little bit if I want. Okay, all right, so we have this interesting setup. It's a little more, it's not a set of stairs, right? It's, I don't know, a rainbow dragon's spine. I don't know. But my point is, what if we were to take this and put it itself into a cloner system, right? So I'm going to create, I mentioned this, whenever it's a good idea, a lot of the times I would say, to have a null object that you can put all the parts in from a cloner system when you want to put it into a new cloner system. So I'm going to take the step and the clone, and I'm going to put them in there. I'm not going to put the delay object. I don't have anything attached to it. I don't need it, and I think it might actually mess with it if I have multiple delay systems in there. But the step effector I want to have in there because it has the linear field as a child, right? And I want to have each one of the arms that I'm about to create here, that you will see, have that set up. So let's go back to the beginning. And so I now have this null object, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hold down the Option key and then create another cloner. Right? So all that clone system is inside of this new cloner, and it's kind of a little messy, right? If I press play, let's see how quickly it does it, right? So it puts those in place, so that's not bad. But that's not really the kind of arrangement that I want. So let's go back to the cloner, iterate, and I don't want a grid array. I want a radial array, right? Already that's more interesting. And I don't know, let's do 10. Ooh, let's live on the edge. Let's go with 12, right? So now I have a cloner system within a new cloner system. I put all the needed parts inside of it. If you're like, well, which parts do I put in there? Just put everything into the null and put it in there. I think that's what I did before, and I'm like, the delay was acting kind of funky, so I just took it out. It's affecting everything. I just want a delay system on all of these, right? Right, and you can see that it's getting a little slow now on the playback because it's doing a lot, right? As it generates all these copies and all the little wiggles that are going on with it. But this is kind of interesting, right? As a design, as a form. I don't even know what, right? But the cloner itself, well, if it's a cloner, let's put an effector in there, right? So let's go back up to our cloner menu, and this time let's use random. And I can double check, here's my cloner, and I can name these, right? This could be like cloner single arm. And this could be cloner wheel. Right, it's like a color wheel or something spinning around. And so the random, if I look at the effectors, you can see it has a random in here. I'll name this random wheel, so I know which one is going to which. So here's the random, and as a default, it changes the position. I don't really want it to change the position, but let's go ahead and look at the scale. If I set this to be uniform, and let's just do something kind of small, right? 0.25. Right, and it seemed like just because of this, I put that in there. Let's put 0.25. Oops. 0.25. Okay, so it seems like it's kind of working in a linear way, but actually there is some randomness inside of there. If you don't like the random that it's giving you for that effector, so right now, there's the strength, right? So you can see the changes that are in there. And I could make this a different type of random noise, just like random. It's just based on the kind of pattern that's being created. I'll just leave it at random for now. But if you don't like this particular random, just change the seed, right? Ooh, I liked that random. You know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to go with that one. So that looks pretty cool. I'm down with that. I can also, I think I had that ground plane in there. Why did I delete that? Sorry, I'm laughing. I can hear my cat in the background. It's got its little fuzzy mouse, and it's trying to get me to come play with it. So if you hear any meowing in the background, it's my cat. Sorry. I don't know why I just made that big. 3,000. It's because I'm laughing about my cat. Okay, so we'll just put this on this little ground plane. So if I wanted to light this, and maybe I'll do that here in a minute as a bonus feature. So I have this example, and it's still doing the same thing, right, where they're going to grow out from the center, and they've got little wiggle. And I've used random to change the size, which is working for me. But another thing about this is with the random, it also, all the effectors have this time offset, right? And maybe in a later tutorial, I'll show the difference between using stagger and random. If I were to turn off all these, in fact, I'll just go ahead and turn off scale, right? So these are all the same setup. But if I wanted these randomly to do their animation that's embedded within this whole entire system, right, I would just use the random effector. So let's just say 20 frames. Right? So you can see each one of them kind of started at its own time. Let's go back to the beginning. So if we want a random distribution and we want to just offset the animation, use the random effector. You don't need to use any of its other parameters. You're just saying use a random offset of time. So I'm going to delete that random wheel. Let's just go back to the beginning. Seriously, she's just howling in there in the other room. It's hilarious. So let's go back to the cloner wheel, and this time let's use our friend the step effector, right? So the step is set up to change the scale. I don't want that to happen. The scale's fine, but let's this time do the same thing, right? So I have a step effector. It's loaded into this cloner. I can check it right there, right? So let's call this step wheel. So this one is affecting, let me put this above. In fact, let's put that down below. So this one is affecting the cloner wheel. And you're like, okay, why are you using the step effector? You're not using the position, scale, rotations, not doing any of these other things. I'm only using it just for this little thing. But this time, instead of seeing it randomly change the animation, where the growth happens, you'll see this is almost like a set of dominoes, right? It now strikes me that this would be a great way to do the domino animation, right? So they're all starting at different times, but now it does the first clone, the second clone, the third clone, the fourth clone, the fifth clone. Which is the right one? It just depends on whatever you want, right, in this scenario. But it's just important to remember that step is looking at the clones, and this is, if you've seen tutorials of using Cavalry, the 2D software, the way that it selects IDs, right? The first one, the second one, the third one, index 0, index 1, index 2. So step and random with the offset are doing very similar things. They're just selecting the clones instead of in sequence in a stepped fashion. They're doing it randomly. I actually like the random one. I'm going to go back and do that again. Oops, sorry, I didn't want to do that. The mouse slipped out of my hands there. Random, there it is. Let's turn that off. Let's turn this back to 20. Right, and again, the same thing. If I didn't like how that grew, I could choose a different one. As it turns out, I really liked the first one better. All right, so I'll just put it back there. Right, and that's just pretty cool. That's just pretty interesting. So, yeah, a random, so we started, and this is part 3, recapping the things I did in class. So we started off with something very practical, right? I want to animate a set of stairs growing for my character to run up for whatever reason. They're in a dream sequence, and the stairs magically appear that they're going to jump on. The delay effector certainly seems dreamy. But what if you wanted to do something more abstract, right, or just kind of expressive? You could do something like this. There's so many different parameters. The main part is that this is all a cascading system that's inside of here. So I could go back and make changes to this setup. Let's make this 5. Right, so I can have these thin little tiny ones. Let's leave that maybe back at 15. Right, but I have these little slivers that are inside of that. I could go back and change the colors. Maybe if I did, I'd go back to the random, and let's go ahead and turn on the scale again, uniform, and let's just scale that just a little bit, 0.25. So I get a little bit of variation. Right, so I can kind of experiment with this system. And certainly if I was going to animate natural forms, something that was like, I don't know, particles growing, limbs on a tree growing, this would be a great place to start as well. So many different options. Okay, it's been a long day, a lot of teaching, a lot of tutorials. I'll call that good. And I hope you enjoy. Happy systems animating.